7-year-old Lily stumbled through the front door, blood dripping from her split lip. Purple fingerprints swelling across both cheeks. Her small body shook with sobs she'd held back for 6 brutal hours. She didn't speak. She couldn't. She just pointed at her battered face with trembling fingers, then collapsed into her father's arms. Derek caught her, felt her tears soaking through his shirt, and his blood turned to ice. "Who did this to you?" She looked up with hollow, broken eyes and whispered the words that would ignite a firestorm. "My teacher watched them hit me, Daddy. She just watched and walked away." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far Lily's story travels. Now let's begin. Lily Harper's hand shot up before anyone else's. It always did. 42, she said clearly when Mrs. Caldwell called on her, her voice carrying the confidence of a child who loved learning the way other kids loved recess. Mrs. Caldwell's jaw tightened. She stared at Lily for a long moment, her red pen frozen mid-air, then turned back to the whiteboard without a single word of acknowledgement. Around Lily, her classmates shifted in their seats. Some exchanged glances. Others looked down at their desks. They'd seen this pattern before. They knew what happened when Lily knew the answer. She always knew the answer. "Teacher's pet," someone whispered from the back row. Lily pretended not to hear. She'd gotten good at pretending. At 7 years old, Lily Harper had already learned a truth that most adults spent lifetimes avoiding. Being smart didn't make you popular. Being smart made you a target. She was the smallest kid in Mrs. Caldwell's first-grade class at Lincoln Elementary, with brown hair that her father braided every morning and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She read at a 4th-grade level. Her handwriting flowed in careful, precise letters that belonged to someone years older. When other kids struggled with addition, Lily was already multiplying in her head. None of this made her happy anymore. None of this made her safe. During silent reading time, Lily opened her library book to find 3 pages torn out completely. Yesterday, the book was perfect. She knew this because she treated her books the way some children treated favorite toys, with reverence, with care, with love. Her fingers traced the jagged edges where pages used to be. Something tightened in her chest. She didn't say anything. She'd learned that speaking up only made things worse. "Where's my pencil case?" Lily searched through her desk. Her backpack, the cubbies near the door. The purple butterfly pencil case her father bought for her birthday, gone. Vanished, like it never existed. Behind her, 2 girls whispered and giggled. "Looking for something?" One of them asked, her voice syrupy sweet. "I know you took it," Lily said quietly. "I know you know where it is." "Took what?" The girl's eyes widened with practiced innocence. "Maybe you lost it. Maybe you should be more careful with your things." Mrs. Caldwell looked up from her desk. Her eyes moved from Lily to the 2 girls and back again. Something flickered across her face, not concern, not curiosity. Something colder. Something satisfied. "Lily," Mrs. Caldwell said, "stop disrupting class and sit down." "But Mrs. Caldwell, I said sit down." Lily sat. The 2 girls smiled. The note appeared in Lily's desk during math time, folded into a tight square. Her stomach dropped before she even opened it. She already knew what she would find. There had been others, so many others. The words were written in red marker, bold and ugly. "Nobody likes you. Stop acting so smart. You should just disappear." Lily refolded the note carefully. She placed it at the bottom of her desk, adding it to the sad collection of others just like it. 7 notes in 3 months. 7 different ways of saying the same thing. You don't belong here. You never will. Lily Harper, Mrs. Caldwell's voice cut through the classroom like a blade. Lily looked up from her worksheet, her heart already pounding. Come to my desk. 22 pairs of eyes followed Lily as she walked to the front of the room. Mrs. Caldwell held up a worksheet, Lily's worksheet, the one she'd turned in yesterday. Did you do this yourself? Mrs. Caldwell asked. Yes, ma'am. The whole thing? Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Caldwell leaned forward. Her perfume was too strong, her smile too sharp. Because this work is very advanced for a 7-year-old. Some might say too advanced. Some might say a child couldn't possibly do this without help. I didn't cheat, Lily whispered. Her face burned. The whole class was watching. I promise I didn't cheat. I'm not saying you cheated. Mrs. Caldwell's smile widened. I'm saying that girls who try too hard to seem special often end up very disappointed. The world doesn't reward show-offs, Lily. People don't like children who think they're better than everyone else. I don't think I'm... You may return to your seat. Lily walked back to her desk on legs that felt like water. Behind her, she heard Mrs. Caldwell's voice, loud enough for everyone to hear. Let that be a lesson to all of you. Humility is a virtue. Remember that. At recess, Lily stood alone by the fence. She used to try to join the games, used to ask if she could play four-square or jump rope or tag. The answers were always the same. We have enough players already. Maybe next time. Sorry, not today. After a while, she stopped asking. Now she just watched the other kids play, counting the minutes until the bell rang, until she could go back inside where at least the rejection was quieter. Hey, freak, Lily turned. 2 boys from the 2nd grade, Jake Morrison and Connor Davies, stood behind her. Both were bigger than she was. Both wore smiles that made her stomach twist. Heard you got in trouble for cheating, Jake said. I didn't cheat. That's not what everyone's saying. Connor stepped closer. Everyone's saying you're a liar, and a cheat, and a teacher's pet. I'm not any of those things. You know what happens to teachers' pets? Jake asked. He was close enough now that Lily could see the cruelty in his eyes, could see that he was enjoying this. Leave me alone, Lily said. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Please, just leave me alone. Or what? Connor laughed. You gonna cry? You gonna run to Mrs. Caldwell? The bell rang. Jake leaned in close, his breath hot on Lily's face. This isn't over, he said. Not even close. That night, Lily sat at the dinner table pushing peas around her plate. Not hungry, Rosebud. Derek Harper watched his daughter with the careful attention of a man who'd learned to read the small signs. The way she hunched her shoulders. The way her smile didn't reach her eyes. The way she answered every question with fine, or okay, or nothing. I'm fine, Daddy. You sure you've barely touched your food? Just tired. Derek set down his fork. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and solid, with arms marked by tattoos that told stories he rarely shared. His hands were rough from years of mechanical work. His leather vest hung on the back of his chair, the Brotherhood MC patch, visible even from across the room. People who didn't know him saw the tattoos and the leather and made assumptions. People who did know him understood that Derek Harper would walk through fire for the people he loved, and that the list of people he loved started and ended with the little girl sitting across from him. Lily, he said gently, you know you can tell me anything, right? Anything at all. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in Lily's eyes. Something desperate. Something afraid. Then it was gone. I know, Daddy, she said. But everything's fine, really. Derek didn't believe her, but he also didn't push. He'd learned that pushing sometimes made Lily retreat further into herself. He'd learned that patience, the hardest kind of patience, the kind that felt like swallowing broken glass, was sometimes the only way to reach her. "Okay, baby," he said, "but I'm here. Whenever you're ready, I'm always here." Lily nodded. She forced down 3 more bites of dinner, asked to be excused, and disappeared upstairs to her room. Derek sat alone at the table for a long time after she left, staring at her half-empty plate, wondering what secrets his daughter was carrying and why she wouldn't let him help. 3 days later, everything changed. The morning started like any other. Derek braided Lily's hair while she ate cereal. He asked about her homework. She said it was fine. He asked about her friends. She said they were fine. He asked if she was excited about school. She didn't answer that one. "Have a good day, Rosebud," Derek said as she climbed out of the truck. "I love you." "Love you too, Daddy." He watched her walk through the school's front doors, her small backpack bouncing with each step. She looked back once and waved. He waved back. It was the last time he would see his daughter whole. Inside Lincoln Elementary, Lily moved through the hallways like a ghost. "Keep your head down. Don't make eye contact. Get to class. Get through the day. Get home." She'd developed a system, a survival strategy. If she could just stay invisible, maybe today would be different. Maybe today they would leave her alone. She was wrong. The classroom was already half full when Lily arrived. She walked to her desk, second row, near the window, and sat down carefully. She pulled out her books. She kept her eyes forward. "Well, well, well," Mrs. Caldwell's voice came from directly behind her. Lily's whole body went rigid. "I see our little genius has decided to grace us with her presence." Mrs. Caldwell circled around to the front of Lily's desk. Her smile was thin and cold. "Did you do your homework, Lily? All by yourself this time?" "Yes, ma'am." "We'll see about that." Mrs. Caldwell plucked the worksheet from Lily's desk and examined it with narrowed eyes. "We'll see." Other students were watching now. Lily could feel their eyes on her, could hear the whispers starting. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to sink through the floor and never come back. "Everyone take your seats," Mrs. Caldwell announced, moving to the front of the room. "We have a lot to cover today." Lily exhaled. Maybe that was all. "Maybe she could get through the morning without Lily stays at recess today," Mrs. Caldwell added casually. "She and I need to have a conversation about academic integrity." Lily's heart stopped. She hadn't done anything wrong. She hadn't cheated. She had never cheated on anything in her life. But it didn't matter. Mrs. Caldwell had decided what story she wanted to tell. And Lily had no power to change it. The morning crawled by like a wounded animal. Every minute felt like an hour. Every time Mrs. Caldwell's eyes swept the room, Lily held her breath. Every time another student whispered, Lily wondered if they were talking about her. At 10:15 during independent reading time, a paper ball hit Lily in the back of the head. She didn't turn around. At 10:30, she discovered her eraser had been stolen from her desk. She didn't say anything. At 10:45, Mrs. Caldwell called on her to answer a question about addition. Lily got it right. Mrs. Caldwell stared at her for a long moment, then said, "Lucky guess," and moved on. The class laughed. Lily's face burned. At 11:00, the bell rang for recess. Other students jumped up from their desks, eager to escape into the sunshine. Lily stayed seated, her hands folded, her eyes on her desk. "Remember, Lily?" Mrs. Caldwell said as the classroom emptied. "You and I have matters to discuss." The last student filed out. The door closed with a click that sounded like a prison cell locking. Lily was alone with Mrs. Caldwell. Do you know why I kept you here? Mrs. Caldwell sat on the edge of her desk, arms crossed, looking down at Lily with an expression that mixed disappointment with something darker. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. Because of my homework, Lily whispered. Because of your attitude. Mrs. Caldwell's voice sharpened. Because you seem to think that being clever makes you special. Because you parade around this classroom with your hand always in the air, always showing off, always desperate for attention. I'm not... Don't interrupt me. Mrs. Caldwell leaned forward. I've been teaching for 15 years, Lily. I've seen girls like you before. Girls who think they're smarter than everyone else. Girls who think the rules don't apply to them. Do you know what happens to girls like that? Lily shook her head. She was afraid to speak. Afraid to move. Afraid to breathe. They fail, Mrs. Caldwell said. They grow up thinking the world owes them something, and then reality hits them like a truck. No one likes a know-it-all, Lily. No one wants to be friends with a show-off. If you don't learn that lesson now, you're going to end up alone and miserable. Is that what you want? No, Lily whispered. Tears were building behind her eyes. She blinked hard, trying to keep them back. Then start acting like a normal child. Stop raising your hand so much. Stop finishing your work before everyone else. Stop making other students feel bad about themselves. But I'm not trying to. Aren't you? Mrs. Caldwell tilted her head. Every time you get a perfect score, you make other children feel stupid. Every time you finish first, you make them feel slow. You might think you're being impressive, Lily, but what you're really being is cruel. The tears spilled over. Lily couldn't stop them anymore. Oh, don't cry, Mrs. Caldwell said, her voice dripping with disgust. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're too sensitive, too dramatic. The world isn't going to feel sorry for you, Lily. The sooner you learn that, the better. Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her whole body was trembling. She wanted her father. She wanted to go home. She wanted to be anywhere but here. You may go to recess now, Mrs. Caldwell said, standing up. Think about what I said. Lily grabbed her jacket and fled. The playground was chaos, children running, screaming, laughing, living in a world that Lily no longer felt part of. She found her usual spot by the fence and leaned against the chain link, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her face was still wet with tears. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Maybe Mrs. Caldwell was right. Maybe she was the problem. Maybe if she just stopped being so smart, stopped raising her hand, stopped finishing first, everything would get better. Maybe then the other kids would like her. Maybe then the notes would stop. Maybe then, hey, freak. Lily's blood turned to ice. Jake and Connor stood 10 feet away, their faces twisted with anticipation. Behind them, 2 girls from her class watched with eager eyes. Mrs. Caldwell told us you got in trouble again, Jake said, moving closer. Said you were showing off again. Said someone needed to teach you a lesson. Lily pressed her back against the fence. That's not what she said you think you're better than everyone else. Connor cracked his knuckles. She said you need to learn your place. Please leave me alone. Lily's voice cracked. Please, I didn't do anything to you. That's the problem, Jake said. He was close now, close enough to touch. You exist. That's what you did. The first slap came fast and hard. Jake's palm connected with Lily's cheek with a crack that echoed across the playground. Her head snapped to the side. Pain exploded through her face. Before she could process what happened, the second blow landed Connor's hand harder than Jake's, hitting the other cheek. Lily's glasses flew off. She stumbled her back, scraping against the fence. She tasted blood where her teeth cut into her lip. Stop, she whimpered. Please stop. Or what? Jake grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You gonna tell someone who's gonna believe you? Lily looked around wildly, desperately searching for an adult, for help for anyone. Her eyes found Mrs. Caldwell. The teacher stood 20 feet away near the school entrance, watching everything. Lily met her gaze silently, begging, silently screaming for help. Mrs. Caldwell held Lily's stare for 1 heartbeat. 2. 3. Then she turned and walked back inside the building. Connor's fist hit Lily's stomach. She doubled over, gasping, tears streaming down her face. Jake pushed her and she fell hard onto the asphalt. Her knees scraped against the rough surface. Blood welled up on her palms where she caught herself. "Remember this?" Jake said, standing over her. "Remember what happens when you try to be special." They walked away laughing. Lily stayed on the ground, curled into herself, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Other children walked past. Some pointed. Some whispered. None of them helped. She was alone, completely, utterly alone. The nurse's office was cold and sterile. Mrs. Patterson, the school counselor, sat across from Lily, her face arranged in professional concern. "Can you tell me what happened?" Lily touched her swollen cheek. The nurse had given her an ice pack, but it wasn't helping. Nothing was helping. "Jake and Connor hit me," she whispered, "at recess." "Did you do something to provoke them?" The question hit Lily like another slap. "What? Sometimes conflicts between children start because of misunderstandings," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "Maybe you said something that hurt their feelings. Maybe you— I didn't do anything." Lily's voice rose. "They just came up to me and hit me. Mrs. Caldwell saw. She saw everything and she didn't do anything." Mrs. Patterson's expression flickered. "I'm sure that's not what happened. Mrs. Caldwell is a wonderful teacher. She would never ignore a child in distress." "She did." Lily was crying again. "She looked right at me and walked away." "Lily," Mrs. Patterson's voice turned patronizing. "I think you might be misremembering things. You were upset. Sometimes when we're upset, we see things that aren't really there. I'm not making it up. No one said you were." Mrs. Patterson patted Lily's hand like she was a small dog. "But let's focus on what we can verify. Jake and Connor say you called them names first. They say they were defending themselves." "That's a lie. Your word against theirs." Mrs. Patterson sighed. "I'll talk to the boys. I'll talk to Mrs. Caldwell. But without proof, there's not much we can do. Try to stay away from them." "Okay. Try not to engage." Lily stared at her. "So nothing happens to them. We take all conflicts seriously," Mrs. Patterson said, which meant nothing. "Now go back to class." The rest of the day passed in a blur of pain and shame. Lily sat at her desk, her cheek throbbing, her stomach aching where Connor had hit her. She didn't raise her hand once. She didn't make eye contact with anyone. She completed her work in silence and turned it in without a word. When Mrs. Caldwell looked at her, really looked at her, saw the bruises, the swelling, the defeat, she didn't say anything. She didn't ask if Lily was okay. She didn't acknowledge that anything had happened at all. She just smiled, that thin old smile, and went back to teaching. At 3:15, the final bell rang. Lily gathered her things slowly, dreading the walk home, dreading the questions, dreading everything. Other children rushed past her, eager to escape. She moved against the current, invisible and alone. Near the door, Jake stood waiting. "See you tomorrow," he said, just loud enough for her to hear. "This was fun. Let's do it again." Lily didn't answer. She pushed through the doors and walked into the afternoon sunshine. Every step hurt. Her face hurt. Her stomach hurt. Her heart hurt most of all. She had 20 minutes to figure out what to tell her father. 20 minutes to decide whether to lie or tell the truth. 20 minutes to choose between protection and pretending. She walked slowly. Derek was in the kitchen when the front door opened. "Hey, Rosebud," he called out. How was... He stopped mid-sentence. Lily stood in the doorway. Her face was swollen purple bruises blooming across both cheeks. Her lip was split and crusted with dried blood. Her knees showed through rips in her jeans, scraped raw. But it was her eyes that destroyed him. Her beautiful brown eyes, usually so bright, so curious, so full of life, now they were dead. Hollow. Empty. She didn't say anything. She just pointed at her face. And then she started to cry. Derek crossed the room in 3 steps. Lily. Lily, baby, what happened? Who did this to you? Tell me what happened. He knelt in front of her, his big hands gentle on her small shoulders. His voice was steady, but his eyes were wild, scanning her injuries, cataloging each bruise, each scrape, each mark of violence on his daughter's body. Daddy, Lily sobbed. She collapsed into his arms, her small body shaking with the force of tears she'd held back for hours. Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for. Derek held her tight, one hand cradling her head, the other pressed against her back. Nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing. They hurt me, Lily whispered into his chest. Jake and Connor. They hit me, they pushed me down, and Mrs. Caldwell saw Daddy. She saw everything, and she just walked away. She didn't do anything, she just... Derek's whole body went rigid. What did you say? Lily pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Her face was a mess of tears and snot and blood. Mrs. Caldwell was watching. I looked at her. I begged her to help, and she looked right at me and walked away. Something changed in Derek's face. Something shifted behind his eyes. Something that had been caged for 20 years rattled against its bars. Tell me everything, he said softly. From the beginning. Don't leave anything out. They sat together on the living room floor. Derek held ice to Lily's face while she talked. She told him about the notes, the stolen belongings, the whispers. She told him about Mrs. Caldwell's comments, her constant criticism, her humiliation during class. She told him about being kept at recess, about being told she was cruel for being smart, about being warned that she would end up alone and miserable. She told him about Jake and Connor, about the slaps, the punch, the fall, the laughter. She told him about the counselor who asked if she'd provoked her attackers, about Mrs. Caldwell pretending nothing had happened, about the hours she'd spent wondering if everyone was right, if maybe she was the problem, if maybe she deserved this, if maybe she should just stop being so smart, and everything would be okay. Derek listened to every word. His face stayed calm. His hands stayed gentle. His voice stayed soft. But his eyes told a different story. His eyes held a fury so deep, so cold, so absolute, that it would have terrified anyone who knew him well enough to recognize it. This wasn't the hot anger that flared and faded. This wasn't frustration or annoyance or even rage. This was something else entirely. This was a father learning that his daughter had been systematically destroyed by the very people who were supposed to protect her. This was a man who had spent 20 years in the Brotherhood, who had faced down dangers most people couldn't imagine, who had learned that some injustices demanded response. This was Derek Harper, realizing that everyone, the teacher, the counselor, the principal, the parents of those boys, had looked at his little girl and decided she didn't matter. They were wrong. They were about to find out how wrong they were. Lily, Derek said when she finished. Look at me. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. None of it is your fault. Do you understand me? But Mrs. Caldwell said, Mrs. Caldwell is wrong. Derek's voice was firm, unshakable. Being smart isn't something to apologize for. Being curious, being eager to learn, being good at things, those aren't flaws, Lily. Those are gifts. And anyone who tries to make you feel bad about those gifts is telling you about their weakness, not yours. But no one likes me, Lily whispered. The other kids hate me. The teacher hates me. Everyone, I like you. Derek cupped her face gently. I love you. More than anything in this world. And tomorrow, everyone in that school is going to learn exactly what happens when they hurt someone I love. What are you going to do? Derek kissed her forehead. I'm going to make some phone calls. And then I'm going to fix this. You don't have to be afraid anymore, Rosebud. I'm going to fix everything. After Lily fell asleep, exhausted from crying, drained from finally sharing everything, Derek stood in the kitchen alone. He looked at his phone. He thought about what he was about to do, about the forces he was about to set in motion. There would be no taking this back. Once he made this call, things would change forever. For Lily, for the school, for everyone involved. He thought about his daughter's bruised face, her hollow eyes, her whispered belief that maybe she deserved this, that maybe being smart was a crime worth punishing. He stopped thinking. He dialed. Marcus, Derek said when the call connected. It's Derek. I need the Brotherhood. On the other end, Marcus Hammer Rodriguez heard something in Derek's voice that 20 years of riding together had taught him to recognize. This wasn't social. This wasn't casual. This was a brother who needed his family. What happened? My daughter came home with handprints on her face. 2 kids attacked her at school. Teacher watched the whole thing and did nothing. The school is covering it up. A pause. Then, I'm making calls. How many do you need? Derek looked through the window at his daughter's bedroom, where she slept with the nightlight on because the darkness scared her almost as much as school did. Everyone, he said. Everyone who can ride. Done. We ride for Lily. The call ended. Derek set his phone down and closed his eyes. By this time tomorrow, Lincoln Elementary would learn a lesson they would never forget. Some children have more than just parents. Some children have an army. The phone tree spread like wildfire through dry grass. Hammer called 5 brothers. Those 5 called 5 more. Within 30 minutes, word reached every member of the Brotherhood MC within a 100-mile radius. The message was simple. Derek's little girl needs us. Dawn at his place. Ride ready. No one asked questions. No one hesitated. When a brother called for help, you answered. When a child was involved, you dropped everything. That was the code. That was the bond. That was what made them family. By midnight, 47 riders had confirmed. By 2 a.m., the number hit 70. By 4 a.m., when the first hint of gray touched the eastern sky, over 100 men had committed to ride. Word kept spreading. Derek sat on his porch through the night, unable to sleep, watching his phone light up with message after message. Brothers he hadn't seen in years. Men from chapters 3 states away. Riders who'd heard the story secondhand and refused to stay home. On my way. Count me in. Nobody touches a brother's kid. We ride at dawn. Derek read each message with a tightness in his chest that wasn't quite grief and wasn't quite rage. It was something else. Something deeper. The overwhelming realization that he wasn't alone, that Lily wasn't alone, that when the world failed you, there were still people who would show up. At 5:30 a.m., he heard the first engine. then another, then 10 more, then too many to count. His quiet street transformed into a sea of chrome and leather. Motorcycles lined both sides of the road, spilling onto lawns, filling driveways. Men dismounted and gathered in small groups, their breath visible in the cool morning air. Hammer was the first to reach Derek's porch. "How is she?" he asked. "Sleeping," Derek said. "Finally. Took her 3 hours to stop crying." Hammer's jaw tightened. "Tell me about the teacher." "Her name is Caldwell. She's been tearing Lily down for months, telling her she's worthless, telling her being smart is a character flaw. And yesterday when 2 boys beat my daughter on the playground, Caldwell watched the whole thing, looked Lily right in the eyes, and walked away. The boys, Jake Morrison and Connor Davies, 2nd graders, big kids. They've been targeting Lily for weeks. School knows. They don't care." Hammer was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and hard. "How many we got?" Derek looked out at the growing crowd. "Last count was 180. Might be more by now." "It'll be enough." Hammer put a hand on Derek's shoulder. "We ride in 30 minutes. You ready?" Derek thought about his daughter's bruised face, her hollow eyes, the way she'd whispered, "I'm sorry," like being hurt was something she needed to apologize for. "I've been ready since the moment she walked through that door." At 6:15 a.m., 200 motorcycles rolled out in formation. The sound was deafening. Engines roaring in synchronized thunder, shaking windows, rattling car alarms, announcing to the sleeping neighborhood that something unprecedented was happening. Derek rode at the front, Hammer beside him. Behind them stretched a river of chrome and leather that seemed to go on forever. Men in vests bearing patches from a dozen different chapters united by a single purpose. They weren't going to hurt anyone. They weren't going to break laws. They weren't going to threaten or intimidate in any way that could be prosecuted. They were simply going to show up. And showing up sometimes was the most powerful thing you could do. Mrs. Patricia Chen was making coffee when she heard the rumble. She lived 3 blocks from Lincoln. Elementary had sent her daughter to school there for 2 years. The sound made her pause. French press in hand, head tilted toward the window. It grew louder, closer, impossible to ignore. She walked to her front door, opened it, stepped onto her porch in her bathrobe and slippers. Her mouth fell open. Motorcycles. Dozens of them, hundreds maybe, rolling past her house in tight formation engines, creating a wall of sound that vibrated through her bones. "Oh my God," she whispered. Down the street, other neighbors emerged from their homes. Mr. Torres stopped loading his car and stared. The Williamson kids pressed their faces against their living room window. Mrs. Rodriguez crossed herself and muttered a prayer. No one knew what was happening. Everyone knew it was big. At Lincoln Elementary, Principal Victoria Hayes arrived 45 minutes before the first bell, as she did every morning. She was unlocking the front entrance when she heard the engines. Her hand froze on the door handle. The sound grew exponentially louder. Closer. She turned slowly, her professional smile fading, as the rumble became a roar. Through the morning mist, she saw them. Motorcycles, coming from every direction. North, south, east, west. Converging on her school like rivers flowing toward a single point. Her keys slipped from her fingers and clattered on the concrete. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God." Mrs. Caldwell's car pulled into the staff parking lot just as the first wave of motorcycles took position along the perimeter streets. She parked, gathered her bag and travel mug, stepped out of her vehicle. The roar hit her like a physical force. She looked up. The color drained from her face so fast she had to steady herself against her car door. Motorcycles. Everywhere. lining every street, blocking every sight line. Men in leather watching her with expressions that held no threat but promised no mercy. Her hands started shaking. Coffee sloshed over the rim of her mug, burning her fingers. She didn't notice. She knew. She didn't know the specifics yet, but she knew. Deep in her gut, in the place where conscience lived, she knew exactly why they were here. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." But yes. Yes, yes, yes. The motorcycles arranged themselves with military precision. They lined every street surrounding the school, creating an unbroken perimeter of chrome and leather. 200 bikes, 200 men, 200 witnesses who refused to look away. They didn't advance on the building. They didn't block the entrances. They didn't do anything that could be called threatening or illegal. They simply existed. They simply watched. And that was enough to transform everything. Parents arriving to drop off their children slowed to a crawl, eyes wide. Some turned around completely deciding that today wasn't a school day after all. Others parked at a distance and held their children's hands tighter than usual. Teachers clustered near the entrance, whispering urgently, "Mr." Davidson, the gym teacher, crossed his arms and surveyed the scene with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Miss Keller pulled out her phone to call the district office. Mrs. Patterson, the counselor, who'd asked Lily if she'd provoked her attackers, stood very still, her expression shifting as pieces started falling into place. Inside the classrooms, students rushed to windows. They pressed hands and noses against glass, staring at the spectacle outside. Phones appeared. Photos were taken. Texts were sent. Within minutes, the whole school knew something massive was happening. Within an hour, the whole town would know. Derek dismounted at the head of the formation, directly facing the main entrance. He wore jeans boots and his Brotherhood vest over a plain black t-shirt. No weapons, no aggression, just presence, just truth. He kicked down his stand and began walking toward the school doors. His steps were measured, unhurried. There was no anger in his gait, no visible fury. But there was something harder than anger, something more implacable than rage. There was certainty. Behind him, the Brotherhood remained motionless. They weren't here to storm the building. They weren't here to make threats. They were here to witness, to be seen, to make absolutely certain that this school, this administration, these teachers understood one simple fact. Lily Harper was not alone. She had never been alone. She had a family that extended far beyond blood, and that family had shown up. Principal Hayes met Derek at the door. Her face had gone the color of old paper. Her professional composure was cracking around the edges. Behind her, through the glass doors, Derek could see teachers gathered in the hallway, students peering from classroom doorways, the security guard speaking urgently into his radio. "Mr. Harper," Hayes said, her voice higher than usual, strained with barely controlled panic. This is highly irregular. You can't just—" "We're here for the truth," Derek said calmly. His voice carried despite its measured tone. "And for every kid who's been scared to speak." Hayes's mouth opened and closed. She glanced past Derek at the wall of motorcycles, at the silent men who made no move to advance, but whose presence spoke volumes. "I think we should speak in my office," she said, finally stepping aside. "I think that's a good idea." The security guard moved to follow his hand, hovering near his radio. He was a retired police officer, experienced in managing threats and de-escalating violence. But this wasn't violence. This wasn't even a threat, not in any legal sense. These men outside weren't breaking laws. They weren't trespassing. They were simply there. The guard had no playbook for this. He followed anyway. The conversation in the principal's office was visible through the large interior windows that faced the hallway. Teachers and staff gathered outside, craning their necks trying to read body language and lip movements. Students found excuses to walk past. The air crackled with tension and speculation. Inside, Derek sat across from Hayes's desk. His posture was relaxed, but unyielding. Hayes's hands fluttered nervously over papers, rearranging things that didn't need rearranging. "Mr. Harper, I understand you're upset," she began, falling back on the language of administrative crisis management. "But bringing all these people to the school is not the appropriate way to— My daughter was assaulted in a classroom." Derek's voice cut through her deflection like a blade. "2 boys hit her in the face. Your teacher watched it happen and did nothing. I'm not aware of any—" "That's the problem." Derek leaned forward slightly. "You're not aware. You should be. It's your job to be aware." Hayes's face flushed. "Mr. Harper, children sometimes exaggerate. My daughter came home with bruises, with a split lip, with scraped knees from being thrown to the ground. Are those exaggerations? Should I have brought photos? That's not what I—" "Mrs. Caldwell has been emotionally abusing my daughter for months, telling her she's worthless, telling her she'll never amount to anything, publicly humiliating her in front of her classmates, creating an environment where other children felt permission to torment her. And when that torment turned physical, when 2 boys beat a 7-year-old girl on your playground, your teacher watched and walked away." "I find that very hard to believe," Hayes said. But her voice wavered. Her eyes flickered toward the window, toward the hallway where Mrs. Caldwell had appeared pale and shaking near her classroom door. "Ask her," Derek said simply. "Ask her what happened at recess yesterday. Look her in the eye and ask her." The silence stretched. Outside the office, something unexpected was happening. The motorcycles had created more than just a spectacle. They'd created something else, something nobody planned, something that might have been inevitable from the moment 200 engines announced that speaking up was finally safe. A small figure appeared in the hallway. 6-year-old Sophie Martinez, a kindergartner, with dark braids and glasses too big for her face, stood trembling near the water fountain. She'd been watching the adults through the office window, listening to the muffled conversation, feeling the weight of the motorcycles outside like a protective shield. Her mother had dropped her off early for breakfast club. She was supposed to be in the cafeteria. Instead, she was here. And something was building inside her chest that she could no longer contain. Miss Keller noticed her first. "Sweetie, you should be at breakfast." "No," Sophie said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried surprising firmness. "I need to tell." "Tell what, honey?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears. But she didn't look away. "Mrs. Caldwell told me I was stupid. Every day. For the whole year. She said I was too dumb to learn to read. She said my mommy and daddy should be ashamed they had such a stupid daughter." The hallway went silent. Teachers who'd been clustered in nervous groups turned toward the small girl. Miss Keller's face drained of color. "Sophie, why didn't you tell anyone before? I tried." Sophie's voice cracked. "I told Mrs. Patterson. She said maybe I was being too sensitive. She said Mrs. Caldwell was just trying to help me try harder." Mrs. Patterson, standing 15 feet away near the office door, made a sound like she'd been punched. Her hand flew to her mouth. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a pattern. Another voice joined Sophie's. 8-year-old Marcus Chen stepped forward from where he'd been standing near his classroom. "She failed me on purpose," he said. His voice was thick with shame and relief in equal measure. "Last year, I had all the right answers on my project. She gave me an F. My dad saw my work, knew it was correct, came in to complain. She told him I must have cheated. She said there was no way I could do work that good on my own." His voice cracked. My dad believed her. He grounded me for a month, but I didn't cheat. I'm good at science, and she couldn't stand it. More children spoke. Then more. Then a flood. The stories poured out like water from a broken dam. Each one worse than the last. Each one revealing another layer of cruelty that had been hidden, normalized, accepted. Lily Rodriguez, 7, told how her lunch money was stolen repeatedly by the same 2 students. I told Mrs. Caldwell every time. She said I was probably just losing it, but they were taking it right in front of her. Jackson Williams, 6, described how he'd been pushed down the stairs. I had bruises on my back. Mrs. Caldwell saw the whole thing. She said I probably fell and was trying to blame someone else. Sarah Kim, 5. Her voice, shaking so hard she could barely speak, told how Mrs. Caldwell made her stand in the corner for an entire day. I had to go to the bathroom so bad, but she wouldn't let me. I had an accident, and she told everyone it was because I was lazy. Each story was another crack in the facade. Each confession was another nail in a coffin that had been building for years. Parents who'd arrived to drop off their children stood frozen in the hallway, hearing their children's truths for the first time. Some cried openly. Others stood rigid with barely contained fury. Lisa Martinez sank against the wall, her hand over her heart, as she listened to her daughter Sophie describe a year of daily psychological abuse. "Baby," she whispered, reaching for Sophie. "Why didn't you tell me? I did tell you, Mommy." Sophie's tears flowed freely now. "You said teachers know best. You said I should try harder to make her like me." The words hit Lisa like a physical blow. She had said that. She remembered saying it. She'd been tired, distracted running late for work. Her daughter had come to her with complaints about her teacher, and she'd dismissed them because surely a teacher wouldn't treat a child that way. She'd been wrong. They'd all been wrong. The collective guilt of parents who'd dismissed their children's complaints, who'd trusted authority over their own kids' lived experiences, settled over the hallway like heavy fog. Inside the principal's office, Hayes heard the voices. She stood moved toward the door, opened it, and stopped. The hallway was packed. Children, parents, teachers. All of them focused on the stream of confessions pouring from students who'd finally found the courage to speak. Told me I was worthless, said I'd never amount to anything, watched them hit me and didn't do anything, called me stupid in front of everyone. Hayes's face went from pale to gray to something approaching green. Derek appeared beside her in the doorway. "Still think children exaggerate?" he asked quietly. Hayes didn't answer. She couldn't. The evidence was overwhelming. The pattern was undeniable, and the woman responsible was standing 15 feet away, back pressed against her classroom door, face white with terror. "I think," Derek said, "you need to call Mrs. Caldwell in here. Now." Mrs. Caldwell entered the principal's office 3 minutes later. Her professional mask was firmly in place despite the trembling in her hands. She sat in the chair Hayes indicated, crossed her legs, folded her hands in her lap. She'd been teaching for 15 years. She knew how to navigate administrative inquiries. She knew how to deflect, to reframe, to position herself as the real victim. "Victoria, I'm not sure what this is about," she began, her voice steady. "But I can assure you that whatever Mr. Harper has told you, why did you watch 2 students assault my daughter and do nothing?" Derek's voice cut through her practiced speech like a knife. Mrs. Caldwell's mouth opened, closed. She recovered quickly, shaking her head with bewildered innocence. "Mr. Harper, I don't know what Lily has told you, but children often misinterpret. I heard you tell Lily she'd amount to nothing. I was there." The voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned. Tommy Fletcher, an 8-year-old with red hair and freckles, stood in the threshold. Behind him, more children gathered. More parents. More witnesses. I was sitting 2 rows behind her, Tommy continued. His voice gained strength as he spoke. You said it during math. You said Lily thought she was so smart, but she'd amount to nothing. You said girls like her always end up alone. Mrs. Caldwell's composure began to crack. That's not... You're taking it out of context. It was a lesson about humility. I heard you too. Another child stepped forward. 9-year-old Destiny Washington, tall and serious. You told Marcus his science project was too good to be his own work. You told Sophie she was stupid. You told Jackson he was a liar. I heard all of it. We all did. More children nodded. More parents' faces hardened with understanding and fury. Mrs. Caldwell looked around the room, seeing her carefully constructed reality disintegrating. You don't understand, she said, her voice rising with desperation. These children need discipline. They need to learn that the world won't always praise them. I was preparing them for reality. You were abusing them, Derek said flatly. That's ridiculous. I was teaching them. You told 2 boys to attack my daughter. The words landed like a bomb. Mrs. Caldwell froze. All the color drained from her face. What? She whispered. Jake Morrison? Derek's voice was ice. Connor Davies. They didn't just decide to beat up Lily on their own, did they? I don't know what you're talking about. But her voice shook. Her hands trembled. Her eyes darted toward the door like a trapped animal looking for escape. She told us to do it. Jake Morrison stood at the edge of the crowd, tears streaming down his face. His mother Janet had her hand on his shoulder, her expression shifting from defensive to horrified. Mrs. Caldwell called Connor and me over at recess, Jake continued. She said Lily was a teacher's pet who needed to be put in her place. She said we'd be doing everyone a favor if we taught her a lesson. She said she'd look the other way. That's a lie, Mrs. Caldwell shouted. I would never... It's true. Connor's voice came from somewhere in the crowd. She said exactly that, and when we hit Lily, Mrs. Caldwell looked right at us and went back to grading papers, just like she promised. The room exploded. Parents screamed for answers. Teachers argued among themselves. Mrs. Caldwell backed against the wall, her professional facade completely shattered. I was trying to help, she shrieked. These children were being coddled. Someone needed to teach them that the world isn't fair. By having them beaten. Derek's voice cut through the chaos. By watching a 7-year-old girl get hit in the face and doing nothing. She needed to learn her place. The confession hung in the air. Everyone heard it. Everyone processed it. Everyone understood exactly what it meant. Mrs. Caldwell had said the quiet part out loud, and there was no taking it back. Principal Hayes reached for her phone with shaking hands. I'm calling the superintendent and the police. You should also call a lawyer, Derek said. For yourself, because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of questions about what you knew and when you knew it. Hayes's face went white. Mr. Harper, I assure you I had no idea. Save it for the investigators. Derek stood. He looked at Mrs. Caldwell huddled against the wall, her career and freedom crumbling around her. He looked at Principal Hayes, finally confronting the cost of her willful blindness. He looked at the crowd of parents and children who'd found their voices at last. Then he walked out of the office through the hallway, through the front doors into the morning sunshine, where 200 brothers waited on their bikes. Hammer met him at the bottom of the steps. How'd it go? Derek thought about Mrs. Caldwell's face when the truth came out, about the flood of children finally speaking after years of silence, about the parents who would never again dismiss their kids' complaints, about the system that had failed his daughter now being forced to change. It's not over, Derek said. But it started. Hammer nodded. What now? Now we wait. We stay visible. We make sure nobody tries to sweep this under the rug. He looked up at the school, where faces pressed against every window, where a teacher sat trembling in the principal's office, while police sirens grew closer, where the culture of silence and complicity was finally being shattered. We stay until every last one of those kids knows they're not alone, Derek said. We stay until justice is done. The Brotherhood didn't move. They didn't speak. They simply remained. 200 witnesses. 200 protectors. 200 ordinary men who'd decided that one little girl's pain mattered enough to drop everything and show up. And somewhere inside the school, word spread among the students. Those men out there. They came for Lily Harper. They came because someone hurt her, and no one helped. They came because sometimes when institutions fail, families rise. For the first time in months, children who'd been silenced began to believe that maybe, just maybe, their voices mattered too. That maybe speaking up wouldn't make things worse. That maybe help was possible. That maybe they weren't as alone as they'd thought. The sirens grew louder. The police arrived. And the reckoning that Lincoln Elementary had avoided for years finally, inevitably, inescapably began. The police cruisers arrived in waves. First 2, then 4, then 6 more. Officers emerged with notepads and body cameras, their faces shifting from confusion to disbelief as they processed the scene before them. 200 motorcycles surrounding a school. Hundreds of parents and children crowding the hallways. A teacher being escorted to the principal's office while she sobbed that she'd done nothing wrong. Detective Maria Santos was the first to reach Derek. "You the one who organized this?" she asked, gesturing at the wall of bikes. "I'm the one whose daughter got beat up while her teacher watched," Derek replied. "The bikes just showed up on their own." Santos studied him for a long moment. She'd been on the force for 18 years. She'd seen a lot of ways people responded to their children being hurt. Vigilante justice, violent threats, property destruction. She'd never seen this. "I'm going to need a statement," she said finally. "From you and your daughter. You'll get it, but first you might want to talk to the other kids. There's about 30 of them in that hallway with stories to tell. Some of them have been waiting years for someone to listen." Santos turned toward the school. Through the glass doors, she could see the crowd. Children clinging to parents, teachers huddled in groups. And at the center of it all, a woman in a floral blouse being led toward the administrative offices by 2 uniformed officers. "That the teacher, that's her. She's already asked for a lawyer." Derek's jaw tightened. Of course she has. Inside the school, the chaos was controlled, but intense. Officers moved through the hallways, separating children from parents, taking preliminary statements, trying to establish a timeline of events. The district superintendent had arrived, his face the color of old chalk, flanked by 2 attorneys, who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Principal Hayes sat in her office with the door closed already on her 3rd phone call with the school board. Her career was unraveling in real time, and everyone knew it. Mrs. Caldwell had been moved to the teacher's lounge, where she sat alone at a table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Her lawyer hadn't arrived yet. The police had advised her not to speak to anyone until he did. She spoke anyway. "This is a witch hunt," she said to the officer guarding the door. "These children are lying. They're manipulating everyone because they didn't like being disciplined. I've been teaching for 15 years. 15 years without a single complaint." The officer didn't respond. "I want to file charges," Mrs. Caldwell continued, "against Mr. Harper, against all of those bikers. This is harassment. This is intimidation. They're trying to destroy my life over some child's fantasy." "Ma'am, I'd really advise you to wait for your lawyer. I don't need a lawyer, I haven't done anything wrong. The door opened. Detective Santos stepped inside. Mrs. Caldwell, she said, I have some questions. I'm not answering anything until my attorney arrives. That's your right. Santos sat down across from her anyway. But I thought you might want to know what we've found so far, Mrs. Caldwell's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. What do you mean? Well, we've taken statements from 23 children so far. 23 children who all describe a pattern of verbal abuse, public humiliation, and selective enforcement of rules. 3 of them specifically mention being told they were stupid. 2 say you called them worthless. 1 says you told her that her parents should be ashamed of her. Children exaggerate. Everyone knows that. We also have 2 boys who claim you instructed them to physically assault another student. Mrs. Caldwell's face went white. That's a lie. They're very consistent, Mrs. Caldwell. Jake Morrison and Connor Davies, both telling the same story. Both saying you called them over at recess, told them Lily Harper needed to be taught a lesson, and promised you'd look the other way while they did it. They're lying to avoid punishment. Maybe. Santos leaned back in her chair. Or maybe 2 10-year-old boys are telling the truth about how an adult manipulated them into committing assault. Either way, we're going to find out. Mrs. Caldwell's composure finally cracked. You don't understand, she said, her voice rising. That girl, Lily Harper, she's insufferable. Always raising her hand. Always knowing the answers. Always making the other children feel stupid just by existing. Someone needed to bring her down to earth. Someone needed to teach her that the world doesn't reward show-offs. Santos stared at her. So you admit you targeted her? Mrs. Caldwell realized what she'd said. Her mouth opened and closed. The color drained from her face. I want my lawyer, she whispered. I'm not saying anything else until my lawyer gets here. That's probably wise, Santos said. She stood up and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back. For what it's worth, Mrs. Caldwell, I was a kid who always knew the answers too. Got bullied for it every day from 3rd grade through 8th. Know what I learned? Mrs. Caldwell didn't respond. I learned that the adults who didn't help me were just as guilty as the kids who hurt me. Maybe more. Because they knew better, and they chose not to care. She walked out. Mrs. Caldwell sat alone with her cold coffee and her crumbling world. Outside, the morning had turned into a media circus. News vans lined the streets beyond the motorcycle perimeter. Reporters with cameras and microphones tried to get statements from anyone who would talk. The story was already spreading across social media hashtags, multiplying by the minute. Justice. For Lily. Protect our kids. Brotherhood stands. Derek stood with Hammer near the main entrance, watching the chaos unfold. You know this is going to be on the national news by tonight, Hammer said. Good. Maybe it'll make other schools think twice about looking the other way. The district's already in damage control mode. Superintendent's been in there for 2 hours. Word is they're trying to figure out how to spin this. Derek's jaw tightened. There's no spin. A teacher encouraged 2 kids to beat up my daughter and watched it happen. Either they hold her accountable or they don't. There's no middle ground. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, and his expression softened. It's Mrs. Patterson, he said. Lily's neighbor. She's been watching Lily while I'm here. He answered. Hey, Mrs. Patterson, everything okay? Derek, you need to come home. His blood went cold. What happened? Is Lily hurt? She's not hurt, but she's asking for you. She saw the news coverage on TV. She knows what's happening at the school. She's asking if it's her fault. Derek closed his eyes. His little girl already carrying so much now, thinking that 200 motorcycles and police cars and news vans were somehow her responsibility. Tell her I'm on my way, he said. Tell her it's not her fault. Tell her none of this is her fault. I've been telling her, Derek. She needs to hear it from you. 20 minutes. He hung up and turned to Hammer. I need to go. Lily needs me. Go. We've got this. We're not leaving until you say so. Derek clasped Hammer's hand. Thank you. For everything. That's what brothers do. Derek walked to his bike, mounted up, and rode away from the school. Behind him, the Brotherhood remained in position, 200 sentinels standing guard over a battle that was far from over. Lily was sitting on the couch when Derek walked through the door. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red from crying. The TV was on, showing aerial footage of Lincoln Elementary surrounded by motorcycles. Daddy? Derek crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled his daughter into his arms. I'm here, baby. I'm here. All those motorcycles, Lily whispered. All those police cars. That's because of me. No. Derek pulled back and cupped her face in his hands. That's because of Mrs. Caldwell. That's because of Jake and Connor. That's because adults who should have protected you didn't do their jobs. None of this is because of you. But if I had just been quiet, if I hadn't raised my hand so much, if I hadn't been so— Stop. Derek's voice was firm but gentle. Listen to me, Lily. Being smart is not a crime. Knowing answers is not a flaw. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. The only people who did anything wrong are the people who hurt you and the people who let it happen. Then why do I feel so bad? Derek's heart broke a little more. Because you're kind, he said. Because you have a good heart. Because even after everything they did to you, you still worry about other people's feelings. But Lily, you cannot take responsibility for other people's choices. Mrs. Caldwell chose to be cruel. Jake and Connor chose to hurt you. The school chose to look away. Those were their decisions, not yours. Lily's lower lip trembled. Are they going to arrest Mrs. Caldwell? I don't know yet, maybe. What about Jake and Connor? They're kids, so it's more complicated. But there will be consequences. I promise you that. I don't want them to go to jail. Lily's voice was small. I just want them to leave me alone. I just want to go to school and learn and not be scared. I know, baby. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Maybe not at Lincoln Elementary, but somewhere. We're going to find you a school where teachers celebrate smart kids instead of tearing them down, where other students want to be your friend, not your enemy, where you can be exactly who you are without apologizing for it. Does that place exist? We're going to find it. I promise. Lily leaned into her father's chest. Derek held her tight, stroking her hair, letting her cry. Outside, the TV showed the ongoing coverage of Lincoln Elementary. Expert talking heads debated whether the Brotherhood's presence was helpful or harmful. Parents who'd been interviewed praised them as heroes. The superintendent released a carefully worded statement promising a full investigation. None of it mattered to Derek right now. All that mattered was the small, wounded girl in his arms and the slow, painful work of helping her believe she was worthy of protection. The investigation at Lincoln Elementary continued for 3 days. Detectives interviewed 47 children, 32 parents, and every staff member who'd worked with Mrs. Caldwell. They collected notes that had been left in Lily's desk. They reviewed security footage from the cafeteria and hallways. They pulled personnel files and previous complaint records. What they found was damning. Mrs. Caldwell had 3 prior complaints in her file, all dismissed as personality conflicts or parent overreaction. One parent had specifically alleged verbal abuse 7 years ago. The complaint had been investigated by Principal Hayes and found to be without merit. Squad Hayes herself had received multiple emails from concerned parents over the years, all forwarded to her attention by classroom teachers who'd noticed something off about Mrs. Caldwell's behavior. Every single email had been filed away without response. The superintendent ordered an external review of the entire district's complaint handling procedures. 2 school board members publicly called for Hayes's resignation. The teachers' union issued a statement distancing itself from Mrs. Caldwell while also defending due process. Meanwhile, the Brotherhood kept their vigil. They didn't stay at the school 24 hours a day, but they rotated in shifts, ensuring that at any given moment at least 20 bikes were visible on the surrounding streets. Their presence served as a constant reminder that the community was watching, that accountability was expected, that this case would not quietly disappear. On the 4th day, the district made its move. Derek got the call at 7 a.m. "Mr. Harper, this is Dr. Robert Thornton, Superintendent of Lincoln Unified School District. I'd like to meet with you this morning. There are some things we need to discuss." "What kind of things?" "The future of this situation, for everyone involved." Derek's grip tightened on the phone. "If this is about making some kind of deal to keep things quiet..." "It's not. I give you my word. I want to make this right, Mr. Harper, but I need your help to do it." Derek was silent for a moment. "Where and when?" "My office, 9 o'clock. And Mr. Harper, you might want to bring a lawyer." The superintendent's office was quieter than Derek expected. No journalists, no cameras, no crowd of parents demanding answers. Just Dr. Thornton behind his desk, 2 district attorneys against the wall, and Derek in a chair facing them. He'd brought his own lawyer, a woman named Patricia Vance, who specialized in civil rights cases. She sat beside him, notepad-ready, expression unreadable. "Thank you for coming," Thornton said. "I know this has been an incredibly difficult week for your family." "Spare me the sympathy," Derek replied. "What do you want?" Thornton took a breath. "I want to tell you what's going to happen. And then I want to ask you for something." "I'm listening." "First, Mrs. Caldwell. She's been terminated effective immediately, not suspended. Terminated. Her teaching license is under review by the state board, and based on what we've found, I expect it will be revoked permanently. The district is also cooperating fully with the criminal investigation. If the DA decides to press charges, we will not stand in the way." Derek nodded slowly. "And Hayes? Principal Hayes has submitted her resignation. It will be announced publicly tomorrow. She's chosen to leave rather than face a formal review process that would almost certainly end in her termination anyway. That's not accountability. That's a golden parachute. I understand your frustration. But a resignation allows us to move forward with restructuring the school's leadership immediately. A prolonged termination process could take months. In that time, the students would suffer." Patricia Vance leaned forward. "What about civil liability?" "My client's daughter was assaulted on school property while a teacher watched. There are significant damages here." "We're prepared to discuss a settlement," Thornton said. "A generous one, including full coverage of any counseling or therapy. Lily needs payment for her transfer to a private school, if that's what Mr. Harper chooses, and a financial settlement for emotional distress." "We'll need that in writing," Vance said. "Of course." Derek held up a hand. "Wait, you said you wanted to ask me for something." Thornton hesitated. "I did." "What is it?" "The Brotherhood, the motorcycles. They've been effective, more effective than I want to admit. But they've also become a symbol, a rallying point. Parents across the district are starting to organize. There's talk of protests at other schools, of investigating other teachers, of demanding the resignation of board members." "Good," Derek said. "Maybe there are other Mrs. Caldwells out there who need to be found." "Maybe there are, but there's also a risk that this becomes about anger rather than solutions, about punishment rather than protection. I'm asking you to help me channel this energy into something constructive." How? Thornton leaned forward. I want to create an independent oversight committee. Parents, teachers, community members, and yes, representatives from the Brotherhood. A group with real power to investigate complaints, to hold administrators accountable, to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. I want your voice on that committee, Mr. Harper. I want you to help us build something better. Derek stared at him. This wasn't what he'd expected. He'd expected stonewalling, cover-ups, legal threats designed to make him go away quietly. He hadn't expected an invitation to be part of the solution. Why? He asked finally. Why would you give up that much control? Thornton's expression was tired. Genuinely tired. Because I have grandchildren, Mr. Harper. 2 of them in this district. And when I think about what happened to Lily, when I think about all those children standing in that hallway, telling stories about being abused and ignored, I think about my own grandchildren. I think about whether they're safe, whether they would be believed if something happened to them. And I don't like the answers I come up with. He spread his hands. I can't undo what happened, but I can try to make sure it doesn't happen again. And I can't do that alone. I need people like you, people who will push back, who will demand accountability, who won't let us slide back into comfortable negligence. Will you help me? Derek looked at Patricia Vance. She gave a small nod. He looked at the district attorneys still standing silent against the wall, their faces carefully neutral. He thought about Lily, about the bruises that had faded, but the fear that remained. About the school she might never feel safe returning to, and the new school that would hopefully give her the childhood she deserved. He thought about all the other children, Sophie and Marcus and Jackson and Sarah, and the dozens of others who'd found their voices because 200 motorcycles had announced that speaking up was finally safe. I'll think about it, Derek said finally. But I have conditions. Name them. First, the committee has to have real power, subpoena authority, access to personnel files, the ability to recommend termination, not just suggest it. If it's just a rubber stamp to make you look good, I'm out. Agreed. Second, the Brotherhood stays involved. Not just me. A rotating seat for any MC member who wants to participate. We represent a part of this community that gets ignored. That changes. Thornton hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. Third, Lily's settlement isn't contingent on my participation. Whatever you're offering her, she gets it whether I join your committee or not. My daughter is not a bargaining chip. Absolutely agreed. Then I'll think about it. You'll have my answer by the end of the week. Derek stood. Patricia Vance gathered her things. They walked to the door. Mr. Harper, Thornton called out. Derek turned. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we failed Lily. I'm sorry that it took 200 motorcycles to make us pay attention. And I'm sorry that you had to fight this hard just to get basic accountability for your child. Derek held his gaze. Sorry doesn't fix anything, Dr. Thornton. Action does. Show me action, and maybe we can work together. Show me more of the same, and I promise you the Brotherhood will be back. And next time we won't be so patient. He walked out without looking back. That evening, Derek sat with Lily on the back porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lily leaned against her father's shoulder. Her small body finally relaxed for the first time in days. Daddy, yeah, Rosebud. Are the bad people going to get in trouble? Mrs. Caldwell lost her job. She might go to jail. Principal Hayes is leaving. The whole school is going to change. What about Jake and Connor? They're in trouble too. Their parents know what they did. There will be consequences. Lily was quiet for a moment. I'm glad, she said finally. But I'm also sad. Why sad? Because I used to think school was safe. I used to think teachers were good. I used to think if something bad happened, someone would help. Now I know that's not always true. And that makes me sad. Derek's heart ached. 7 years old, and already she'd learned that the world wasn't fair, that authority couldn't always be trusted, that sometimes the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones who hurt you most. He pulled her closer. "You know what I've learned," he said. "I've learned that when the official systems fail, other people step up. Did you see all those motorcycles, Lily? Did you see all those men who came to help? Yeah. Those are my brothers, my family, and now they're your family too. When I called them and told them what happened to you, every single one of them dropped everything and came. Because that's what family does. That's what community does. We protect each other. But I don't even know them." "You don't have to. That's the point. They didn't come because they knew you. They came because they knew me, and they knew that a child was hurting, and they knew that standing up was the right thing to do. That's what good people do, Lily. They show up. Even when it's hard. Even when it's scary. Even when nobody asks them to." As Lily thought about this. "I want to be like that," she said finally. "I want to be someone who shows up." Derek smiled. "You already are, Rosebud. You already are." They sat together as the sun disappeared below the horizon. Father and daughter, survivor and protector, the worst behind them, and something new beginning. In the distance, the faint rumble of motorcycle engines echoed through the evening air. The Brotherhood was still out there, still watching, still waiting, still ready. Because some battles ended with a single victory, and others required vigilance that lasted a lifetime. This battle was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, Derek Harper believed they were going to win. The enrollment papers for Maple Grove Elementary arrived 3 days after Derek's meeting with the superintendent. Lily sat at the kitchen table watching her father sign document after document. Her stomach churned with a mixture of hope and terror. A new school meant new teachers, new classmates, new chances for everything to go wrong again. "Daddy, yeah, Rosebud, what if the teachers there are mean too?" Derek set down his pen. He looked at his daughter at the fear in her eyes that hadn't fully faded even after everything that had happened. "Then we figure it out together," he said, "just like we did this time." "But Lily, I've talked to people. I've done my research. Maple Grove is different. The principal there, Mrs. Anderson, she's been running that school for 12 years. Not a single complaint. The teachers get trained in something called positive discipline. They celebrate kids who love learning instead of tearing them down." "You promise?" "I promise I'll be watching. I promise I'll be listening. And I promise that if anything at all makes you feel unsafe, you tell me immediately, and we handle it. No more suffering in silence. Deal?" Lily nodded slowly. "Deal." Derek signed the last page and slid the stack of papers into an envelope. "First day is Monday," he said. 3 days from now. How do you feel about that?" "Scared," Lily admitted. "But also maybe a little excited. Is that weird?" "That's not weird at all. That's brave." The first morning at Maple Grove Elementary, Lily sat frozen in the passenger seat of her father's truck. Her backpack was clutched against her chest like armor. Her breathing came fast and shallow. Through the windshield, the school looked like every other school she'd ever seen, and that was exactly the problem. "I can't do this," she whispered. Derek didn't push. He didn't tell her to hurry up or calm down or stop being dramatic. He just sat with her engine idling, giving her whatever time she needed. "What if they already know?" Lily asked. "About Lincoln Elementary, about Mrs. Caldwell, about all of it. What if everyone's talking about me before I even walk through the door? Some of them might know," Derek said honestly. "It was on the news. People talk. But Lily, here's what I've learned about people. They remember headlines for a day or two, and then they move on to the next thing. By the end of your first week, you won't be the girl from the news. You'll just be Lily. And Lily is pretty amazing. You have to say that. You're my dad. I have to say it because it's true. Derek reached over and took her hand. But I'll tell you what. If it gets too hard, if you need me to come get you, you tell your teacher and they'll call me. I can be here in 10 minutes. You're not trapped, Rosebud. You always have a way out. Lily gripped his hand tight. Okay, she said finally. Okay, I can do this. You can do this. She opened the truck door. She stepped out. She looked back at her father one more time. I love you, Daddy. I love you more. Now go show them what you're made of. Mrs. Jennifer Sullivan was waiting at the classroom door when Lily arrived. She was younger than Mrs. Caldwell, softer around the edges. She crouched down to Lily's eye level instead of looming over her. You must be Lily, she said. Her smile reached her eyes. I'm so glad you're joining our class. I've set up a desk for you right by the window. I noticed in your transfer papers that you love reading, so I pulled some books I thought you might enjoy. No pressure to read them, but they're there if you want. Lily stared at her. Books, chosen specifically for her. A teacher who'd read her file and actually thought about what might make her feel welcome. Thank you, she whispered. You're welcome. Now come on in. I'll introduce you to everyone. The classroom was nothing like Mrs. Caldwell's room. Student work covered every wall, not just the perfect papers, but all kinds of work, each one labeled with enthusiastic comments. I love how you explained your thinking. Your creativity shines here. You worked so hard on this. There were reading corners with soft cushions, tables instead of isolated desks, a question wall where students posted things they were curious about. Mrs. Sullivan led Lily to the front of the room. Everyone, this is Lily Harper. She's joining our class today. I want everyone to make her feel welcome. 22 faces looked at her. Lily braced herself for the whispers, the eye rolls, the judgment. Instead, a girl in the front row smiled and waved. Hi, Lily. I'm Emma. Your desk is next to mine. Want me to show you where everything is? Lily blinked. Yes. Thank you. She walked to her desk and sat down. Emma immediately leaned over. Mrs. Sullivan is the best, she whispered. You're going to love it here. Lily wasn't sure she believed that yet, but for the first time in a very long time, she wanted to. The first test came during math time. Mrs. Sullivan wrote a problem on the board and asked for volunteers to solve it. Lily knew the answer immediately. Her hand twitched, wanting to rise. But then she remembered. Mrs. Caldwell's cold stare. The cutting remarks. Stop showing off. Nobody likes a know-it-all. Lily kept her hand down. Mrs. Sullivan noticed. Her eyes found Lily's, and something understanding passed between them. Lily, she said gently, would you like to try this one? Lily's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at her to stay silent, to stay invisible, to protect herself. But Mrs. Sullivan was waiting, not demanding, not mocking, just waiting. 36, Lily said quietly. Exactly right. Mrs. Sullivan smiled warmly. Can you tell us how you figured it out? I bet your thinking process could help other students. Lily's eyes went wide. Help other students, not stop showing off, not you're making people feel bad. Help. I multiplied the ones first. Lily said, her voice growing slightly stronger. And then the tens, and then I added them together. Perfect explanation. That's a really efficient strategy. Did everyone hear that? The class nodded. Nobody rolled their eyes. Nobody whispered. A boy in the back row actually wrote something down in his notebook, like he wanted to remember Lily's method. "Thank you, Lily," Mrs. Sullivan said. "That was really helpful." Lily sat in stunned silence. She'd answered a question correctly and been thanked for it. She'd shared her thinking and been called helpful instead of insufferable. The world hadn't ended. Everything she'd been taught to fear hadn't happened. At recess, Lily stood by the fence. Old habits died hard. She positioned herself in her usual spot, back to the chain-link eyes, scanning for threats, waiting for the moment when someone would approach with cruel intentions. "Hey, Lily." She flinched. Emma was running toward her, followed by two other girls. "Want to play Foursquare with us? We need a fourth." Lily's mouth went dry. "I'm not very good at it." "That's okay. Neither is Maya." Emma gestured at one of the other girls, who laughed and shoved her playfully. "Come on, it'll be fun." Fun. Recess being fun. The concept was almost foreign. "Okay," Lily heard herself say. "I'll try." They played for 20 minutes. Lily missed the ball more than she hit it. Nobody made fun of her. Nobody accused her of cheating when she finally scored a point. They just played the way children were supposed to play, without undercurrents of cruelty or hidden agendas. When the bell rang, Emma grabbed Lily's hand. "Sit with us at lunch," she asked. "Really?" "Yeah, really. You seem nice, and you're really smart. I wish I could do math like that." Lily felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been locked tight for so long she'd forgotten it existed. "I'd like that," she said. "I'd really like that." The transformation didn't happen overnight. For the first 2 weeks, Lily remained guarded. She tested boundaries constantly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Every time Mrs. Sullivan called on her, she flinched before answering. Every time a classmate approached her, she braced for cruelty. It never came. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Lily began to change. She raised her hand more often. She spoke up in discussions without being called on. She laughed at lunch with Emma and Maya, and a boy named James, who invited her to join his science club. She stopped checking over her shoulder every time she walked down the hallway. She stopped hiding her completed work, so others wouldn't see how fast she'd finished. She stopped apologizing for knowing things. Mrs. Sullivan noticed everything. She pulled Lily aside after class one afternoon, 3 weeks into the school year. "I wanted to tell you something," she said. "I'm proud of you, Lily. Not just for your grades, which are excellent, but for how brave you've been. Starting at a new school is hard for anyone. Starting after what you went through, that takes real courage." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "You know what happened. I know enough. And I want you to know that if anything ever makes you feel unsafe here, if anyone ever says or does anything that hurts you, you come straight to me. I will believe you. I will help you. That's a promise." The tears spilled over. No teacher had ever said that to her before. No adult at school had ever promised to believe her. "Thank you," Lily whispered. "You're welcome. Now go enjoy recess. I heard Emma say something about a butterfly project you two are planning." Lily smiled through her tears. "We're building a butterfly garden for the science fair." "That sounds wonderful. I can't wait to see it." Lily ran out to the playground, her heart lighter than it had been in months. At home, Derek watched the changes with quiet joy. The daughter who'd walked through his door with bruises on her face was slowly becoming someone new. Not different exactly, but more herself. The version of Lily that had been buried under layers of fear and self-doubt was finally emerging. "Daddy, guess what happened today?" She bounded through the door after school, her face bright with excitement. No more dragging herself to the table. No more monosyllabic answers. "What happened, Rosebud?" "I got picked for the math Olympiad team. Mrs. Sullivan said I scored the highest on the qualifying test. There's 5 of us, and we're going to compete against other schools, and I get to represent Maple Grove." Derek's eyes stung with tears he refused to let fall. "That's amazing, Lily. I'm so proud of you. And Emma's on the team, too. We're going to practice together. And Mrs. Sullivan said she'd give us extra problems to work on during lunch if we want. And nobody said I was showing off or trying to be special or anything. They just said congratulations. Because that's how it should be." "I know." Lily's voice grew quieter, more serious. "I know that now. Mrs. Caldwell was wrong, Daddy, about everything. Being smart isn't bad. Knowing answers isn't bad. She was the bad one, not me." Derek pulled his daughter into a hug. "You're right," he said. "She was wrong. And you, Lily Harper, are absolutely perfect exactly the way you are." 5 weeks into the new school, Lily came home with her report card, straight A's across the board. But it was the comments that made Derek's eyes water when he read them. Lily is a natural leader and collaborator. Her curiosity and enthusiasm inspire her classmates. She asks thoughtful questions that push our discussions in new directions. It is a privilege to teach a student who loves learning as much as Lily does. These weren't grudging acknowledgments from someone who resented brilliance. These were celebrations of a child finally being allowed to shine. "Can we frame it?" Lily asked, peering at the report card over Derek's shoulder. "I want to put it on my wall." "We can absolutely frame it." "And can I show it to the Brotherhood guys? At the next meeting?" Derek looked at her. "You want to come to a Brotherhood meeting?" "They helped me," Lily said simply. "They showed up when nobody else would. I want to say thank you, and I want them to know that it worked, that I'm okay now, that they didn't do it for nothing." Derek's throat tightened with emotion. "I think they'd love that, Rosebud. I think they'd love that very much." The Brotherhood meeting was held in Hammer's garage on a Saturday afternoon. 23 members sat on folding chairs and motorcycle seats discussing club business, upcoming charity rides, maintenance issues. Derek sat toward the front, his leather vest worn with the same pride it had carried for 20 years. When the regular business concluded, Derek stood. "Before we wrap up, I have something. Or rather, someone." He walked to the garage door and opened it. Lily stood outside her purple butterfly backpack clutched in her hands, her face nervous but determined. "Hey, Rosebud, come on in." She walked into the garage, slowly aware of 23 pairs of eyes watching her. These men were huge, covered in tattoos, dressed in leather, everything that should have been intimidating to a 7-year-old girl. But Lily wasn't afraid. She knew who they were. She knew what they'd done for her. She stopped in the middle of the room and took a deep breath. "I wanted to say thank you," she said. Her voice was small but steady. "For coming to my school, for helping my daddy help me, for making it so I didn't have to be scared anymore." The garage went completely silent. "I'm at a new school now," Lily continued. "Maple Grove Elementary, and it's really good. My teacher is nice. The other kids are nice. I'm on the math Olympiad team, and I have friends, and I raised my hand in class today, and nobody laughed at me." She reached into her backpack and pulled out her report card. "I wanted to show you this, because you helped make it happen. When those men on motorcycles showed up at Lincoln Elementary, it changed everything. Not just for me. For all the kids who were scared. For all the kids who thought nobody would believe them." She held up the report card so everyone could see. "Straight A's," she said. "And my teacher wrote that I inspire my classmates, not that I'm a show-off, not that I make people feel bad, that I inspire them. That's because of you. That's because you showed up." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Hammer stood up. He walked over to Lily and crouched down to her eye level, his massive frame somehow gentle and unthreatening. "Kid," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "that might be the best thank you speech anyone's ever given in this garage, and I've been coming here for 30 years. Lily smiled. "Really? Really?" Hammer looked around at the assembled brothers. "What do you say, boys, think we did okay?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. 23 men rose to their feet, clapping and cheering and whistling. Some wiped their eyes quickly, pretending it was dust. Others didn't bother hiding their tears. Lily stood in the middle of it all, beaming, surrounded by men who looked like society's outcasts, but who had hearts bigger than anyone knew. Derek watched his daughter from across the room, his own eyes wet. This was what community looked like. This was what protection meant. Not violence, not threats, just showing up, just being present, just refusing to look away when a child needed help. After the cheering died down, Hammer put a hand on Lily's shoulder. "You know what, kid, I think you earned something today." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small patch. It was the Brotherhood's emblem miniaturized with the words "Protected by the Brotherhood" embroidered around it. "This is unofficial," Hammer said. "Don't tell anyone I gave it to you, but I want you to have this. Sew it on your backpack. And whenever you're scared, whenever you feel alone, you look at that patch, and you remember you've got 200 brothers who will show up for you anytime, anywhere, for any reason. You're family now, Lily Harper, and family takes care of its own." Lily took the patch with trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll never forget." "We know you won't." Hammer stood up and looked at Derek. "You raised a good kid, brother. A damn good kid." "I know," Derek said. "Believe me, I know." That night, Lily sat at the kitchen table with a needle and thread, carefully sewing the patch onto her backpack. Derek watched her work her small fingers, surprisingly deft, her concentration absolute. "You know," he said, "a year ago you would have been too scared to stand up in front of all those men and give a speech." "I know." Lily didn't look up from her sewing. "A year ago I was too scared to do anything. Too scared to raise my hand. Too scared to tell you what was happening. Too scared to believe that anything could ever get better." "What changed?" Lily finished her last stitch and held up the backpack to admire her work. The patch sat proudly on the front pocket, small but unmistakable. "You changed it," she said. "You believed me. You didn't tell me I was being too sensitive or exaggerating or making things up. You just believed me. And then you did something about it. You showed me that when things are wrong, you don't have to accept them. You can fight. You can stand up. You can make things change." Derek's throat tightened. "I just did what any father would do." "No, you didn't." Lily's voice was serious, older than her 7 years. "A lot of fathers would have told me to tough it out, to stop being dramatic, to just try harder to fit in. You didn't do any of that. You listened, and then you called 200 people to help. That's not what any father would do. That's what you did. And I'm really, really grateful." She set down the backpack and walked over to her father. She wrapped her arms around his neck and hugged him tight. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Rosebud. More than you'll ever know." They held each other in the quiet kitchen, father and daughter survivor and protector. Outside, the night was peaceful and still. Inside, something had healed. Not completely, not all at once, but enough. Enough to move forward, enough to hope, enough to believe that the worst was finally truly over. 5 years passed. Lily Harper stood at the front of Riverside Middle School's auditorium, no longer the small, wounded 7-year-old who'd walked through her father's door with bruises on her face. She was 12 now, tall for her age, standing with the kind of confidence that came not from never being broken, but from being broken and choosing to rebuild stronger. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a simple t-shirt that read, "Your voice matters," in bold letters across the chest. The Brotherhood patch was still sewn onto her backpack, faded now, but still visible, still meaningful. 200 sixth graders sat before her, scattered in clusters throughout the auditorium. Some paid attention. Others whispered to friends. Most looked bored, expecting the usual anti-bullying assembly with its generic slogans and forgettable advice. Lily didn't give them generic slogans. When I was 7 years old, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system, my teacher told me I would amount to nothing. The whispers stopped. She said it in front of my entire class. She said girls like me, girls who asked too many questions, who got excited about learning, who couldn't hide how smart they were, always ended up alone and miserable. 200 faces turned toward her. For a long time, I believed her. I made myself smaller. I stopped raising my hand. I tried to disappear because I thought maybe if I could just be less, people would stop hating me for being more. Lily paused. Let the words sink in. It didn't work. The bullying got worse, and one day 2 boys hit me in the face while that same teacher watched and did absolutely nothing. A murmur rippled through the audience. Some students leaned forward. Others exchanged glances of recognition. I thought I was alone, Lily continued. I thought nobody would believe me. I thought suffering in silence was the only option. She shook her head slowly. I was wrong. The auditorium went completely still. I went home that day with bruises on my face and blood on my lip. I was so scared to tell my dad what happened. I thought he'd say I was exaggerating. I thought he'd tell me to try harder to fit in. I thought he'd do what every adult at school had done, which was nothing. Instead, he believed me. He held me while I cried, and then he picked up the phone and made one call. Lily's voice strengthened. The next morning, 200 motorcycles surrounded my school. 200 men showed up because my father asked them to, not to hurt anyone, not to threaten anyone. Just to stand there, just to bear witness, just to say, we see what's happening and we refuse to look away. Gasps scattered through the audience. That day, everything changed. Other kids started speaking up. Other parents started demanding answers. The teacher who'd abused me for months lost her job and went to prison. The principal who'd ignored years of complaints resigned in disgrace. The whole district had to rebuild its policies from the ground up. Lily looked out at the sea of young faces. But here's what that teacher didn't know. Here's what she couldn't have predicted. She told me I'd amount to nothing. Steel entered her voice. Watch me prove her wrong. Every single day. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Students sat up straighter. Someone in the back started clapping. It spread through the auditorium like wildfire until 200 kids were on their feet, applauding, cheering, some of them actually crying. Lily waited for the noise to settle. I'm not telling you this story to make myself look good, she said when she could speak again. I'm telling you because I know some of you are going through the same thing right now. I know some of you are being hurt and staying silent because you think nobody will believe you. I know some of you have tried to speak up and been told you're too sensitive, or that you're exaggerating, or that you should try harder to fit in. She leaned forward slightly. I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. I'm here to tell you that your voice matters. I'm here to tell you that speaking up is worth it even when it's terrifying, even when you're not sure anyone will listen. She pointed at the audience. You don't have to wait for 200 motorcycles to show up. You can be the person who stands up. You can be the one who says, this isn't okay, when you see someone being targeted. You can be the friend who listens when someone finally finds the courage to speak. Her voice dropped, became more intimate. You can be the difference between a kid who suffers in silence and a kid who knows they're not alone. The auditorium was absolutely silent. My name is Lily Harper. 5 years ago, I was the scared little girl who thought she'd amount to nothing. Today, I'm a peer mentor who helps other kids navigate bullying and self-doubt. I'm an honor roll student at a school where teachers celebrate smart kids instead of tearing them down. I have friends who love me exactly as I am. And I have a father who taught me that when the world fails, family rises. She smiled. Mrs. Caldwell said I'd end up alone and miserable. She couldn't have been more wrong. I've never been less alone. I've never been less miserable. And I've never ever stopped raising my hand in class. The final applause was deafening. After the assembly, students swarmed Lily. A girl with tears streaming down her face grabbed her arm. My teacher does the same thing to me. She tells me I'm showing off. She makes fun of my answers in front of everyone. Lily took her hand. What's your name? Madison. Madison, I want you to write down everything that's happened. Every comment, every incident. Every time she's made you feel small. Then I want you to tell your parents. And if they don't listen, you come find me. I'll help you. I promise. A boy stepped forward, his voice shaking. My older brother beats me up at home. My parents say I need to stop being such a baby about it. They say brothers fight and I need to toughen up. That's not okay, Lily said firmly. Violence is never okay, no matter who it's from. There's a counselor here named Mrs. Rodriguez. She's safe. She listens. Will you talk to her? I don't know. Maybe. I'll go with you if you want. You don't have to do this alone. For 30 minutes, Lily stood in that auditorium surrounded by children who'd never had anyone tell them their pain was valid. She listened to story after story. She gave out her email address. She made promises she intended to keep. This was legacy. This was the transformation of trauma into service. This was everything Mrs. Caldwell had tried to destroy, thriving in spite of her. That evening, Derek picked Lily up from school. She climbed into the truck with a tired smile, her Your Voice Matters shirt wrinkled from hugs, and her voice hoarse from talking. How'd it go, Rosebud? Good, really good. I think I helped some kids today. You definitely helped some kids today. Derek pulled out of the parking lot. I got calls from 3 parents already. They wanted to thank you. One of them was crying. Lily was quiet for a moment. Dad, yeah, thank you. For what? For believing me 5 years ago. For not telling me to tough it out or stop being dramatic. For making that phone call. For everything. Derek's throat tightened. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I know. That's why I'm thanking you. Because you would. Because you did. Because you changed my whole life by believing a 7-year-old who came home crying. She reached over and squeezed his hand. I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to be the person who shows up when nobody else will. Derek had to blink hard to keep the road in focus. Baby girl, you already are. Across town, the Brotherhood held their monthly meeting in Hammer's garage. 23 members sat in their usual spots discussing club business, upcoming events, maintenance schedules. The routine hadn't changed much in 5 years. The faces had aged a little. The bikes had a few more miles on them. But the bond remained unbroken. Derek sat toward the front gray, threading through his beard now, but still solid. Still present. Still the man who'd made one phone call that changed everything. The meeting was winding down when Hammer's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned slightly, answered. The room continued its low conversation while he listened. But those closest to him noticed when his expression shifted. Curious to serious. Serious to determined. He ended the call and stood. The room went quiet. We've got a situation. Derek straightened in his seat. Around him, brothers did the same. That was Rebecca Torres. Her 9-year-old son came home today with bruises on his back. Says he's been getting jumped after school for 3 weeks. Reported it to the principal twice. Nothing's been done. The kids doing it are football players' sons. School's protecting them. The silence that followed was thick with tension and purpose. Sound familiar? Hammer asked, his eyes finding Derek across the room. Too familiar, Derek replied. The Silent Guardians ride again. It wasn't really a question. The Silent Guardians initiative had been the Brotherhood's lasting contribution to community protection. Whenever institutions failed children, whenever schools looked away and parents had nowhere to turn, the Brotherhood showed up. They'd done it 6 times in 5 years. 6 children protected. 6 systems forced to change. Derek looked around at his brothers. Men who'd been judged by their leather and ink their whole lives. Men who society dismissed as dangerous, as criminal, as unworthy of respect. Men who showed up when it mattered. How many can ride tomorrow? Derek asked. Hands went up around the room. All of them. Every single one. Hammer grinned. I'll start the phone tree. We should have 50 by morning. Maybe more. Make it happen. Derek stood and walked to his bike. He ran his hand along the familiar chrome, thinking about his daughter's speech today, about all the children she'd reached, about the legacy that kept growing and spreading and changing lives. Lily didn't need him to fight her battles anymore. She'd learned to fight them herself. More than that, she'd learned to fight them for others. But there were still children out there who needed what Lily had needed 5 years ago. Someone to stand up. Someone to show up. Someone to make it absolutely clear that they mattered. Brother, Derek turned. Hammer stood behind him. You okay? More than okay. Derek smiled, just thinking about how far we've come. Long way from one scared dad making a phone call. Long way indeed. Hammer clasped his shoulder. Your girl did good today. I heard the assembly was something else. She's something else. Always has been. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Derek shook his head. No, she's better than me. Stronger. Braver. What happened to her could have broken her forever. Instead, she turned it into fuel. She turned it into purpose. I just made one phone call. She's building a whole movement. That's what kids do when they're raised right. They surpass us. They become better than we ever could have been. Hammer grinned. Makes all the hard stuff worth it, doesn't it? Yeah, it really does. The phone tree activated within the hour. Word spread through the network with practiced efficiency. By midnight, 75 riders had confirmed. By dawn, the number would double. The message was simple. 9-year-old needs us. Roosevelt Elementary. Ride ready. Same message. Different child. Same response. Because this was what the Brotherhood did now. This was who they'd become. Not just a motorcycle club. A force for protection. A wall of witnesses. A promise to every child in their community that suffering in silence wasn't the only option. Derek swung his leg over his bike, settled into the seat, started the engine. The familiar rumble vibrated through his body. 20 years of riding, and it still felt like home. He pulled out of Hammer's driveway and headed toward his own house, where Lily was probably doing homework safe in the life they'd built together. Tomorrow he'd ride again. Tomorrow another child would learn what Lily had learned 5 years ago. Tomorrow, another school would face accountability. Another set of bullies would meet consequences. Another failing institution would be forced to do better. The work never really ended. It just evolved. It spread. It grew. and that was exactly how it should be. Lily was sitting on the porch when Derek pulled up. She stood as he dismounted, her expression curious and knowing at the same time. Another call. Another call. When do you ride? Tomorrow morning. Lily nodded slowly. Can I come? Derek studied his daughter. 12 years old. Confident. Strong. No longer the fragile child who'd needed protecting. Now a young woman who wanted to protect others. It might be intense, he said. I know. I want to see it. I want to see what we do. I want to understand the whole thing, not just the parts you tell me about afterward. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he said finally. But you stay in the truck until I give the all clear. And if things get complicated, you do exactly what I say. No arguments. Deal. Then yeah, Rosebud. You can come. Lily threw her arms around him. Thank you, Dad, for including me, for letting me be part of this. You've been part of this since the beginning. You're the reason any of it exists. They walked inside together, father and daughter, the past behind them, and the future waiting. Tomorrow, a 9-year-old boy would learn that he wasn't alone. Tomorrow, a school would learn that some families refused to look away. Tomorrow, the legacy would continue. The morning came gray and cool. Lily sat in the passenger seat of Derek's truck, watching as motorcycles converged from every direction. 50, 70, 100, more. It's beautiful, she whispered. What is all of them coming together? For someone they've never met. For a kid they don't know. Derek nodded. That's what community looks like. Real community. Not the kind you get by living in the same neighborhood or going to the same church. The kind you build by showing up when it matters. I want to build that. I want to create communities like this everywhere. You already are, Rosebud. One speech at a time. One kid at a time. One voice at a time. The convoy began moving toward Roosevelt Elementary. 120 motorcycles rolled through the quiet street's engines, creating a wall of sound that rattled windows and announced their approach. Lily watched through the windshield as neighbors emerged from houses, as cars pulled over to let them pass, as the whole world seemed to stop and pay attention. Dad, yeah, I'm not scared anymore. Derek glanced at her. Of what? Of anything? Lily's voice was steady, certain. For so long I was scared of everything. Scared of school, scared of teachers, scared of other kids, scared of speaking up. Scared that if I was too smart, or too loud, or too much, something terrible would happen. She watched the motorcycles stretching out ahead of them. I'm not scared anymore, because I know now that even if something terrible happens, I won't face it alone. I have you, I have the Brotherhood, I have Mrs. Sullivan and Emma and everyone at Maple Grove. I have all the kids I've helped over the years. I have a whole army of people who will show up for me the same way we're showing up for this boy today. Derek's eyes blurred with tears. That's the whole point, Lily. That's what we've been building all along. Not just protection. Connection. Not just safety. Belonging. You don't have to be brave alone. None of us do. Roosevelt Elementary came into view. The motorcycles arranged themselves along the perimeter, creating that familiar wall of chrome and leather. Derek pulled the truck into a parking spot across the street, where Lily could see everything clearly. A small boy stood on the front steps of the school, his mother's arm around his shoulders. His face was pale and frightened. His eyes darted between the motorcycles and the school building, trying to process what was happening. Then his gaze found Lily through the truck's windshield. She waved. He waved back, hesitant, but hopeful. Derek opened his door. "Stay here until I know. All clear first." He walked toward the school, joining the other Brotherhood members who were already in position. Lily watched him go, watched him become part of something larger than himself, watched the legacy he'd built in action. She pulled out her phone and opened a notes app. "Things I want to say to that boy," she typed. 1. You're not alone. 2. It's not your fault. 3. Speaking up was the bravest thing you could do. 4. It gets better. It really, really gets better. She looked up from her phone and watched as school administrators emerged, as parents gathered, as the process that had changed her life 5 years ago began again for someone new. The boy was still looking at her. She held up her phone and typed one more thing, then pressed it against the window so he could see, "You've got this." He smiled. Small, scared, but real. And Lily knew with absolute certainty that he was going to be okay. Because behind every child who needs protection stands the possibility of an entire community refusing to look away. Behind every father making a desperate phone call stands a brotherhood ready to answer. Behind every broken system stands ordinary people willing to do extraordinary things by simply showing up. The engines rumbled, the crowd grew. The reckoning began. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a 12-year-old girl who'd once believed she would amount to nothing sat in a truck and watched her legacy unfold. Mrs. Caldwell had been wrong about everything. Lily Harper was not alone. She was not miserable. She was not worthless. She was exactly who she was always meant to be, and she was just getting started. The story doesn't end here. It never really ends. Because every child protected becomes an adult who protects others. Every act of standing up creates permission for others to stand. Every brotherhood that shows up reminds the world that ordinary people can be extraordinary when it matters most. Derek walked back to the truck an hour later, his face tired but satisfied. "How'd it go?" Lily asked. "Principal's cooperating. District's already involved. The boys who've been targeting him are suspended pending investigation. His mom is crying happy tears inside." "Good." "Yeah." Derek started the engine. "Good." They drove away from Roosevelt Elementary, leaving behind the motorcycles that would stay until justice was done. "Dad," Lily said as they turned onto the main road. "Yeah, Rosebud. I love you. I love you too. Always have. Always will." "I know." Lily leaned her head against the window, watching the world pass by. "That's how I know everything's going to be okay. Not just for me. For everyone. Because there are people like you in the world. People who believe kids. People who show up. People who refuse to look away." Derek reached over and squeezed her hand. "There are people like you in the world too, Lily. Don't forget that. You're part of this now. You're part of making it better." "I won't forget." She squeezed back. "I promise I won't forget." They drove home in comfortable silence. Father and daughter, survivor and protector, the past behind them and the future wide open. The bruises had healed long ago. The fear had faded to memory. What remained was strength. What remained was purpose. What remained was a little girl who'd pointed at her bruised face and changed everything, now grown into a young woman who would spend her life making sure no child ever had to suffer in silence again. Because some stories end with, "and they lived happily ever after." But the best stories end with, and then they helped others do the same. This is that kind of story. This is Lily Harper's legacy, and it will echo through generations.